All right, photo crew, let's take a look at how to start resizing, rotating, and moving around our individual photos here inside of our Photoshop document. Okay, so the first thing I'm actually going to recommend is, once again, we take a moment to help organize ourselves. So right now, you'll see that Photoshop just automatically names our new layers, layer 1, layer 2. If I add another layer, it would be layer 3, so on and so forth. However, once we have multiple layers and we start making these photographs a little bit smaller, it can be difficult to understand what is on each layer. So I'm actually going to take a moment to name these. So let me take a look at my first layer. So if I want to be able to see my first layer and not my second layer, I'm going to go over here to this little eyeball symbol, and if I make it invisible, oh, let me try again. Perfect. So my layer is still here, it's just invisible. So if I'm looking here at layer 1, I can see that that is a yellow coffee mug. So I'm going to double click on my layer and I'm going to type in yellow mug. That way I know what it is. I'm not going to tell you guys how to label your layers. You just want to make sure you're naming it something that makes sense to you. I know that once I have multiple layers over here and I'm reading through, I will remember, oh yeah, that's the photo with the yellow mug. Okay? Now let me go back up here. I want to be able to see my layer 2 again, so I'm going to click so the little eyeball pops up. And this layer, I'm putting sugar in my coffee mug. So I'm going to double click on layer 2 and I'm going to name this layer sugar. And that's a clue. I will remember what this image is. Beautiful. Now we have our layers here organized a little bit better. Now both of these photos are too big. So let's make them a little bit smaller by using the free transform tool. So I'm going to start by making the sugar layer a little bit smaller. So I'm going to make sure I have that selected over here. I'm going to go up to Edit, Free Transform, and you will see that this little bounding box appears around my photograph. And if I click on the corner, I can start to make my photograph shorter. I could stretch it to make it taller. I can make it itty itty bitty. It all depends on how I move it. However, if you are like me and you do not like to smush or stretch your photos, you can go up here at the top of Photoshop. There's a little symbol. It kind of looks like a link. And if I click on this, it will maintain my aspect ratio. And basically what that means is now when I click and drag my corner, it will not let me stretch or smush my image. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, because remember, we're eventually going to have 5 photos here. So I'm going to just start there. I'm happy with this size for right now. We can always go back and rotate, resize, make changes later on. For right now, I'm happy with this. Before I can make, or excuse me, not make, but before I can select another tool or do some other action, I need to tell Photoshop, hey, I'm done resizing this picture. And the way that I'm going to do that is by pressing Enter on my keyboard. And when I do that, you'll see that the bounding box has disappeared. So that's the sugar layer taken care of. Let's go ahead and click on the yellow mug layer, and we're going to rinse and repeat. Edit, Free Transform. My bounding box has appeared. I do not want to stretch my photo, so I'm going to go up here at the top and click on my little link. I'm going to click and drag to make this photo a little bit smaller too. And with our free transform tool, besides being able to move that photo around, make it smaller, make it bigger, I can also bring my cursor to the side. And do you see how that cursor is now this curved arrow? If I click and pull down, I can also rotate my photo. Okay, so that's looking pretty good for now. I am going to go ahead and press Enter. And from here, you can start rearranging your photos. You can continue to open up more files. Remember, we need at least 5 in each joiner, and we can just continue working. However, before we sort of save our file for right now, so we can continue with this next class, let's go ahead and look at some different ways we can change how these photos overlap and some other ways we can move them around. So let's say I would like to have these two photos touching, but I don't want to resize them anymore. Well, I don't have to go into the transform tool if all I want to do is just move these around. Instead, I can go over here to our toolbar and I can click on the move tool. It looks like 2 arrows that are intersecting. Some people say it looks a little bit like a compass, like on a map. But I'm going to click my move tool, and if I click here on this yellow mug picture, I can start moving it around. And here's the cool thing about the move tool. I can click on the other photo and look what it did. As soon as I clicked here onto the sugar image, it automatically moved to that correct layer. If I want to move my mug image, my yellow mug, I can click on that and move it around, and look, it automatically selected that layer. So that's super fun. So let's say I want these 2 images to overlap, but right now I have my sugar image on top of my yellow mug. Well, what if I want just the opposite? You can change how your images overlap by changing the location of the layers. So if we look over here in our layers panel, we can see that in the way back we have our background. The next layer is the yellow mug, and the top layer is the sugar mug. If I want the yellow mug to be on top of my layers, right, on top of my stack here, I'm going to click on the yellow mug and drag it to the top. And do you see how that changed? Let me show you again. I could click on the sugar image and pull that layer up to the top, right? And you can keep moving that around and changing that order as many times as you would like, okay? But there we go. So we have resized and rotated using the free transform tool. We have moved our images around using the move tool, and we have played with rearranging, right? Clicking and dragging our different layers to change how our images are overlapping. So before you stop working for today, here's our last step that you must absolutely do. Go over to File and Save. Okay, it's going to ask you, hey, do you want to maximize compatibility? We're going to say yes. Whew. And now we're good to go. You can exit out of Photoshop. Please, please, please start to get into the habit of going to File, Save every few minutes, because Photoshop does not automatically save for us. We have to be on top of it and make sure that we are remembering to do that from time to time, because if your laptop crashes or there's a power outage, if you haven't been going to File, Save, unfortunately sometimes you can lose your progress. But with that, we have saved our file. We're good to exit out, and we will continue working on this next time. Thank you guys so much.